All right, if it's all right with you all, I'm going to talk while you eat. My section actually is going to start with a video too, so feel free to eat while all this is going on. So we started off talking about marriage is a gift, right? But at the same time, marriage is something that we have to work at too. Not everything comes so easy. When you're with a person long enough, you'll grow to find that there's things that you disagree about. And so this section is talking about how do we work with those disagreements. What are some things that we should do, and what are some things that we should not do in order to make sure that the relationship stays healthy even through those disagreements. So we're going to call this section Fair Fighting. I want to start off showing a real quick video. It's got, they're going to be talking about the 4 horsemen. So it's kind of after the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but there are 4 horsemen things not to do, destructive things in conflict management, 4 things not to do. So be listening out for those things. And then I think there's 5 or 6 rules of things that we should do. So just keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. We're going to be talking about that stuff after the video too. So we'll go ahead.
When you get into an argument with someone you love, how do you fight? Is it a slugfest, a peaceful mediation, or do you go straight for the nuclear option? Hi, I'm Peter Montoya from Thrive Union, and I'll be sharing our current thinking on fighting fair, why it matters, and how to do it. But first, please support our channel by hitting subscribe, tapping the notification bell, and sharing with friends and family. It's free. We all have unique differences in our personalities, values, experiences, and beliefs. As a result, relational friction is a universal human truth. Most of us learn to resolve frictions by fighting to win or to be right, but this approach virtually never makes a relationship better. Instead, learning how to fight fair promises to turn conflict into growth opportunities rather than relational erosion. Marriage researcher John Gottman shows us what fighting unfair looks like. He identifies 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that lead to disaster. First, criticism or attacking a person instead of their behavior. The difference is a partner saying, "You are so stupid," instead of, "I really didn't like what happened last night." Second, contempt or showing superiority and disdain. It's like saying, "You are just too stupid to get this," through words, action, or tone. Third, defensiveness or claiming self-righteousness or victimhood to avoid responsibility. It's saying, "I'd never do that," to deny a real concern, or "You hurt me first, so it's your fault." Fourth, stonewalling or refusing to engage. If a partner wants to talk and you refuse to respond or just walk out of the room, you're stonewalling. Fighting unfair doesn't resolve our frictions, but fighting fair will go beyond resolution to actually strengthen our relationships. Principle number 1, focus on understanding, not on being right. Never try to punish anyone by making them wrong. Therapist Jeffrey Rubin offers this advice to any arguing couple who want to improve their relationship. If you follow one principle, you'll save yourself a lot of time, money, and tears, being more interested in understanding your spouse than in winning. Otherwise, this process will take longer than it needs to, and you'll waste a lot of money trying to win. And you'll both lose. Guaranteed. Principle number 2, come from a place of humility and understanding. This means admitting when you're wrong and acknowledging your partner's good points when you disagree. Practice active listening, repeating back what your partner is saying and asking if you're getting it right. Principle 3, aim for a win-win outcome where both parties walk away feeling better than they did before. Our brains are hardwired to win, but unless we start thinking of mutually beneficial solutions, our relationships will fail. Say a couple frequently fights about one partner's overspending. A win-win solution could be that the overspender gets to spend a certain amount completely guilt-free. The thriftier partner helps set the amount and enjoys staying within a budget. Both partners address their need, feeling heard, and walk away happier together. Keep in mind that feelings are real and need to be validated before a resolution can be made. Use I statements to foster understanding and avoid criticism or contempt. Say, I feel hurt, rather than, you hurt me. Principle 4, de-escalate. Sometimes, friction can create overwhelming negative momentum. When things are too emotionally charged, take a break or go on a walk to clear your head. Avoid loaded words such as always or never, which catastrophize conflicts. Say, I feel like you're arriving late more often, instead of, you're always late. And when appropriate, hug it out. Hugging releases incredible bonding hormones that can cut through resentment, anger, and blame. Principle number 5, respect boundaries. Determine what volume and tone of voice is appropriate for resolving conflicts. Don't physically threaten or intimidate your partner. Avoid verbally attacking them or shaming them. If your partner violates your boundaries and does not correct their behavior when asked, leave until your boundaries are respected. Despite natural friction, relationships are worth it. Fighting fair will turn conflicts into opportunities to deepen vulnerability, mutual understanding, and communication. We'll not only strengthen relationships, we'll learn to thrive together.
Thrive Union is a real-world community and life school dedicated to human well-being. Our regular events include parties, game nights, supper clubs, hikes, and Thrive meetings to build deep levels of intimacy, empower us to grow, and improve our world. Our life school provides educational videos, articles, conferences, and educational courses. Visit our website at thriveunion.org to learn more.
So I chose that video for you guys because I feel like it does a pretty good job of summarizing everything that I wanted to get across for today. And the top thing, the number one thing, if you don't get anything else out of this session right here, here's the one thing that I want you guys to get from this, okay? When we have conflicts in our relationship, let's have them not be me versus you. Let's have them be us versus that, right? We can objectify what it is that we're actually arguing about and not become a versus match where someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. Because that's what we're ultimately trying to do, is maintain this foundation of trust and respect in a relationship. And when we start to oppose each other, that's when we start to lose that trust and respect foundation. That's why those 4 horsemen are so dangerous in a relationship, because what they're actually doing is starting to chisel away that trust and that respect. So we're going to go over a little bit, just to review exactly what is talked about for the 4 horsemen, the 4 things not to do in a conflict. Oh, I don't have a clicker. Is it over here? Okay. So we have the 4 horsemen here. If you didn't catch the name, John Gottman is the guy that created all this stuff. He's got a lot of really good work on marriage stuff. If you're interested, if you like what this is and you want to learn more about it, I would highly recommend Googling his stuff. He's got lots of good, even free material out there too. So the first of the 4 horsemen is criticism. Criticism is described as attacking the person and not the problem. It was that number one thing that I was just telling you guys about. Making an argument, me versus you, rather than us versus that. So a common way of seeing criticism is when you tell your partner, well, you always do this, or you never do this. then it no longer becomes about the issue that's going on. It starts becoming about who that person is, that character, that personality that you're addressing. Make sure that when we get in arguments, we're staying focused on what it is that's upset us. The second one sounds awfully sinister at first, but I think it can be less so. It's contempt. It's this like attempt to show superiority or intimidate your spouse. And I think initially when I was like reading about contempt and the idea of contempt, you can think of like almost that like unhealthy like power dynamic in a relationship, and that sort of like almost like borderline abusive form of like superiority over somebody. That's obviously like contempt, but contempt can be like even more, I feel like, sinister than that, even more difficult to detect. And one of the things that I feel like is very common in relationships is sarcasm. Like when someone comes to you, your significant other comes to you and has a concern, and you can kind of like scoff it off or be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. You know, like that kind of attitude, that kind of mentality is also a form of contempt. It's a way of like almost like belittling and showing that like you're above whatever the conversation is that's trying to be had, right? That's contempt. The third one is defensiveness. And I think the truth is like everyone experiences defensiveness. Framing yourself as the victim or completely like trying to deflect the attack by redirecting it. So this, I feel like, is very common. Oh, I didn't do that. I would never do that. I messed up once. Like, give me a break. Like, that's our defensiveness kicking in. That's like the trigger that we have to make ourselves want to appear as the victim in a criticism. And then we have stonewalling, withdrawing to avoid conflict. It's like getting silent treatment or just leaving the room, refusing to have the conversation, avoiding the conflict altogether any way that you can. So I didn't tell my wife Corey that I was going to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it just to show you guys the four horsemen, they happen. Like, it's okay. You see them in every single conflict, in every single relationship. What I'm not trying to say is that the four horsemen are like going to kill your marriage. That's not the truth. The truth is, when you do see these things, like, be aware of them and be aware of like, I need to make sure that I don't like stay in this. I need to get out of this. So I'm going to use an example of a conflict that my wife and I had this week. So I'll go ahead and be the first to say, I messed up, okay? I'll just put that out there. I messed up.
Can you say that again?
I messed up. It was my turn to clean the kitchen, and I forgot to put away the broccoli, okay? And Corey wanted to make sure that I knew that it was not okay to just leave the broccoli sitting out, right? And so immediately I hit like defensive mode, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why are you arguing with me about the broccoli? Like, this is, why do we have to be upset about each other over this broccoli? And she was like, fine, you know what? Fine, I'm not mad. And we went into stonewalling, right? And so we spent like an hour or 2 hours, like not even talking about the conflict or the conversation, and just like acting like, you know, it's just broccoli, like not a big deal, sure, right? Well, I feel terrible, and one of my personal rules, I can never like go to bed or go to sleep without like something being resolved. So it's like bedtime. And she's still stonewalling. I'm still like totally defensive, maybe even a little bit in this like contempt part here, like rolling my eyes, trying to act like, why is she getting on me about the broccoli? Right? But then eventually, I think both of us like became aware of like, it's not about the broccoli, right? What we were really arguing about was this, or what the conflict devolved into, is that we weren't getting enough time for each other and like for ourselves. And so she felt like that I was like skipping out on some of our rules in the relationship, which I was, and I felt like I was working all the time. And so we had to like put a pause and be like, okay, let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about that issue. And it was really good that we were able to like stop and reframe the argument, because at the start it was totally me versus you. And it was like, who's going to put away the broccoli? But luckily for us, like the conflict actually ended up really good, because it got us into a good conversation about things that we needed to fix in our relationship. And that was the whole point of the argument in the first place, was to recognize that there were things that we needed to fix in our relationship. We turned it from this me versus you to us versus that. And that's really helpful. And so in the video, it jumps into some of these fair fighting rules. And I just want to point out that the first two rules are all about understanding. That's the whole point of conflict. If your significant other is willing to share their disagreements and the things that they don't like, the point is usually so that you can understand where they're coming from. When we get defensive, we lose that opportunity to be understanding. So, when you feel a conflict coming on, take a chance to understand. Aim for a win-win outcome. De-escalate. It's easy to fight fire with fire, but eventually someone's got to pour some water on it and de-escalate. And then respect boundaries. I want us to actually practice a fight, okay? That's what this next situation is going to be. But let me also remind you guys about these rules. There was this second rule, come from a place of humility and understanding. And that's what we're going to focus on today. This is actually called a listening exercise. And so what I'm going to do is the person on the right side, so on this side of the table, I want you to be the speaker. And the person on the left side, on this side of the table, I want you to be the listener. And so for this, the speaker, I want you to think about your answer to this question. Which of the four horsemen do you see most from your spouse? And I want you to be able to have like a short and quick conversation. Now my ground rules for this is this. Talk about your feelings when you experience that tactic. So like, I see a lot of criticism and it makes me feel inferior. Something like that. Keep it short and brief, please, because we want to give the listener as much of an opportunity to succeed on this, right? If it gets into like a 5 or 10 minute conversation, they're not going to be able to summarize. Listener, that is all your role is. Let me say that again. For the people that have the listener role, your only job is to listen closely. And when you get a chance to speak, you're not coming back with defensiveness. You're coming back with a summary of what you heard. So you would say something like, I heard that I am oftentimes critical and that it makes you feel inferior, right? That would be the answer to that example. Repeating back exactly what the person just told you, okay? I want us to spend like a minute in this scenario, and then I'm gonna have you guys like switch roles, okay? So remember, speaker, share which of the 4 horsemen do you see most from your spouse, and talk about your feelings. Make it short and brief. Listeners, listen closely to what is said, and when the speaker is done speaking, summarize and repeat what you heard them say, word for word if you can, okay? All right, let's spend some time doing that. On your mark, get set, go. All right, I'm gonna put a pause in it. Just, if anyone's willing to give feedback, is this comfortable? Like, is this manageable, workable? Okay. The thing is, I think it's really hard to be the listener in this section, because I think it's really easy to spark into a conversation. I want to make sure that like we're not doing too much. I want you guys to have conversation about this for sure. Like when we're done with this, have conversation. But for the exercise, just make sure the speaker's speaking once, and then like the active listener is just repeating back exactly what they heard the speaker say. Okay? So let's reverse the roles. So if you're on the left side now, I want you to be the speaker. Think about which of the 4 horsemen you see most from your spouse, and how you feel when you experience that. And then the listener is going to be on the right side. And be prepared. All right. We'll start for this next one. Cool. So I hope that you guys get a chance at some point to talk about like how that goes. Because I think it'd be interesting. I know this is kind of like a canned scenario, and I know this like speaking and listening exercise generally is supposed to be pretty rigid on how it works. But that's how I am hoping conflict can go in your marriage, is that like you guys can come down and have like a difficult thing to talk about and come at it not as a way of like, this is me trying to, tell you that you're wrong or that you're bad, but this is me just trying to share what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. And I hope that the other person is able to listen, and not listen to defend themselves, but listen to like really understand what's being said. That is so important in relationships. And so I hope that you guys are able to talk about that a little bit longer. And it's the key to fair fighting. Not me versus you, but us versus that.